Good morning. My name is Jaden Duenas. Today is Saturday, February 27th, 2021, and this is Join the Discourse, episode 24 now. Again, my name is Jaden Duenas, and I do this show every single week, but last week I took a little break, got some rest, and this week I had to come back to close out Black History Month with y'all. So today, to celebrate Black History Month properly, we're going to be discussing the revolutionary speeches of Fred Hampton. So be watching a few clips of him speaking. This is all from the Chicago Film Archive, and the video that I'm about to show is posted on YouTube by a channel called Afro Marxist. The link is in the description. I want to give them proper credit, but the original footage is actually from a documentary, and that documentary is called The Murder of Fred Hampton. It was published in 1971, recorded in 1969, and it was actually documenting the Black Panther Party and the revolutionary work they were doing in Chicago, as Fred Hampton leading the Illinois chapter as chairman. But this is some of the only footage we've had of Fred Hampton, and it was originally intended to document Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, etc. They ended up documenting his assassination instead, because it was the exact point that he was assassinated. And so at this point, he was young. He was speaking about revolution in front of crowds in the 60s. The transcripts are pretty limited. Nothing was really televised at all. Nothing was televised at all. So this makes this a really interesting piece of history to study, something that we don't have as much access to as something like I don't know, an MLK speech or a Nixon speech or something like that. So right now we're going to get into it. First thing, real quick, just check out jd-originals.com. I've got a link in my bio. You can see past episodes, artwork, stuff like that I'm doing. And you'll be able to get a better hold of who I am, what I do, and be able to join the discussion going forward. And so for this discussion this week, I'm going to be breaking it down into 3 different segments, discussion 3 short clips from this original film. And the first one is just Fred Hampton on racism and revolution. So check that out.
I'm the deputy chairman of the state of Illinois, Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. And a lot of people don't understand the Black Panther Party's relationship with white mother country radicals. A lot of people don't even understand that word that Eric uses a lot. But what we're saying is that there are white people in the mother country that are for the same types of things that we are for stimulating revolution in the mother country. And we've said that we'll work with anybody and form coalition with anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism. And we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism.
So one of the great things about Fred Hampton was that he saw through to the reality of what racism really is. An excuse for capitalism is what he called it. And that's what it is. Capitalism uses psychosocial institutions like racism to partition or divide people. And so partition is a word used commonly talking about capitalism and sociology. Basically, partitioning is this process of separating people into distinct groups of a primary, a normal, standard person, and an other group, something called the other, quote unquote. And the process can also be called othering, to make it simple. But basically, capitalism creates this group labeled as the other to subjugate them at the butt end of capitalism. Because remember, capitalism only works when one person can capitalize and advance ahead of another person. So the capitalists assert themselves into the capital class, using things like racism to ensure that they remain in the elite empowered class while subjugating someone else, and that someone else is stepped on, right? And so that someone else in this case is the other. Throughout most of American history, the other has been Black people. But over the years, we've seen the other become immigrants and Latinx people. We've seen the other become Muslims. We've seen the other become Black immigrants from across the diaspora. We've seen the other become very much so the LGBTQ plus a community. We've seen the other specifically in this like war on drugs and mass incarceration era. We've seen the other become the prison population and the way that we differentiate between felon and non-felon. And a felon doesn't have a right to vote, doesn't have access to basic human rights like housing and food from food assistance, I should say, not absolutely food. And then around the world, we see global oppression and poverty. And we see that these others that benefit global capitalism are often the quote unquote shithole countries, according to Donald Trump. You know, the Black and brown nations enthralled with violence and poverty and corruption as a product of global capitalism. And so we, like Fred Hampton, come to realize that the other group is only distinguished as a source of power and wealth for the capitalists. And they're willing to kill and oppress to maintain that power and wealth. They're willing to kill and oppress to maintain that division and that distinct group of the other in order to maintain their status as the capitalist class. And so I wrote about that in my Slavery is Capitalism essay. That's published on my website. Again, link in bio. You can see it right here as well on my overlay. But that's why Fred said, as you heard, that the Black Panther Party is not a racist organization. They're on board with all revolution against the capitalist system of division and oppression. And so he has another clip in the same video shouting, white power to white people. Black power to black people. He says X power to those we left out. And you'll see if you watch the new film Judas and the Black Messiah, if you look into the life of Fred Hampton, you'll see that he worked very closely alongside other groups, like almost what would be considered like far right and white supremacist groups that were waving the Confederate flag in the 60s. And he's walking right alongside them saying, like, down with the oppression that we're all experiencing. He's saying the police are beating their children just as much. So why wouldn't they work together to feed their children, feed Chicago, and make sure that the people have the power that they should have? And so Hampton truly believes that all power in the hands of the people will fix the ills of society imposed by capitalism. Regardless of any social division created by capitalism, it can fix the ills of the society imposed by capitalism, because at the end of the day, all of these individual groups fighting for white power, black power, indigenous power, etc., we're all fighting for the same thing, which is to reconcentrate power out of the hands of an oppressive fascist state and into the hands of the people that make the state function in the first place. The normal people, the working class people, the poor people, not the class of billionaires, and especially not the class of white male billionaires that have dominated and still very much dominate the world's economies and the global ruling capitalist class. And so I've got one more clip coming up here. This one is Fred Hampton again on the practice of revolution and the hard work it takes. So don't go nowhere. I'm gonna be right back to keep discussing with you. Just check this out.
Everybody in the state of Illinois is going to have to be involved or even around the revolution, because we're going to have one. We're going to have to do more than talk. We're going to have to do more than listen. We're going to even have to do more than learn. We're going to have to start practicing, and that's very hard. We're going to have to start learning, and you learn through practice. We got to start making mistakes, and you learn through making mistakes. We got to start getting out there with the people. And a lot of times we think we're better than the people. That's insult and that's criminal. Think you're better than the people. But we got to get together and learn where it's at. It's going to take a lot of hard work.
Sorry, I had to cough. I didn't realize that I wasn't muted. But for me, the key takeaway in this speech specifically is in his final lines, which is, it's going to take a lot of hard work. And so Fred Hampton makes it very clear from the go, in order to execute a people's revolution where we have true democratic power and collective action for all people, we need to get organized. We need to get out there with the people. We need to volunteer to help each other in our communities. We need to be serviceable to people, and we need to actively make ourselves serviceable to people. We need to work collectively with our neighbors to lift each other up and our other surrounding communities up as well. And ultimately, we need to hold the capitalist system accountable for its damage and make the revolutionary change necessary to counter that damage. And so, like he said, we need to make mistakes. We need to get out there and mess up. We need to be able to learn from those mistakes and push forward in the struggle toward the freedom and empowerment of all people. Because the bottom line is that ultimately we need to get out there and fight hard for our collective social and economic liberation. And now hearing these words from me might be a shock if you know me personally. Maybe not a shock. I probably not shocking you, but basically my family comes from a very modest background, but we've still been very economically privileged. In fact, I would say blessed to live with the comfort that we do, especially knowing where we came from, because in my grandmother's case, from abject poverty and refugee status coming to Chicago from Cuba, right? And excuse me, for my mother's family, from working class inner city Milwaukee, and to now owning a house and having comfortable cars and stable jobs and income, even in the pandemic. And so there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful for the blessings we've received. But if I'm so blessed and privileged, then why am I talking about liberation and class struggle and poverty as if I actually have some stake in the matter? Well, I've got one more clip about liberation. And it's basically going to be Fred Hampton explaining the part of why we don't turn our backs on where we've come from and why we continue to fight for the cause of revolution. So he begins by talking about a community program to feed children breakfast for free in Chicago. And he talks about the importance of feeding the people and collective action to lift up and liberate each other. And he tells us about how we may have an opportunity to reach this so-called mountaintop, escaping from the class struggle. But looking back down, we'll always see where our struggle started and the people that are still there struggling in the valley. And so right now, let's take a look at what Hampton says about the mountaintop and the valley. Take a look and please listen closely.
That breakfast for children is something else. You ought to dig on it. Every sister in this audience. Every sister in this audience ought to get themselves together and come on down and help us with that Breakfast for Children program. You ought to come down and help feed them children in the morning. We have Breakfast for Children because we teach the people through practice, through observation and participation, that people can be fed free. That's the people thing. Socialism is the people. You're afraid of yourself. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself. We know they have our pictures, we know they're looking for us, we know they want us, but we're still saying that even though we could be in a sense, as far as this system goes, on the mountaintop, we in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding what's in the valley, knowing that the people in the valley, knowing that we originally came from the valley, knowing that our plight is the same plight as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemy is on the mountaintop, our friends are in the valley, we say even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we're going back to the valley.
So y'all heard him. We're going back to the valley. We can never let ourselves get comfortable and complacent, and never let yourself sit up on that mountaintop with your oppressor. We go back to the struggle and we go back into the valley because we know what it's like there. And there are still children to be fed and people who are oppressed, and so we get organized. Use your resources if possible. Volunteer yourself where you can and do every little individual thing you can to push forward the collective struggle for liberation from the chains of slavery and capitalism and fascism and corruption around the world. Because all the little individual things we do add up into this big picture, the big things that we all do together. And that's called collective action. All right. And collective action is what will achieve a collective revolution. And so before I head out, what do you think about Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party? How does he compare to other black revolutionaries like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King Jr., like Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, maybe Angela Davis? Like, how does she compare as well? And how does he compare to your own view of the world? Is he easy to agree with, or do you find yourself struggling to get on board with him? This is Join the Discourse, so if you've got anything at all to add, any questions, please do not hesitate to join the conversation with me. Leave a comment below, send me a DM. You can also email me with any thoughts you have at jaden@jd-originals.com. Remember, you can always listen back on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can listen on YouTube. You can watch on YouTube. You can always play back these live streams on Twitter. Last thing is just check out my YouTube channel. It's Jaden Duenas. You can also find that on my website, again, right here, jd-originals.com. You'll be able to see past episodes, different live streams that I've done, different art videos that I do, paintings, photography, videography, etc. And so there'll be plenty to go on there. Other than that, I'm going to see you next time. But next time, I'm actually going to start moving to one live episode per week. So I might start doing other things throughout the week just to have, more interaction and engagement with the people getting in there. Oh, hey, Destiny, I see you in there. But I'm going to move to just one per week. I'll be talking about sociology, revolution, stuff like this, all the different topics that I talk about every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. And so tune back in on Saturday for another revolutionary discussion. I'm going to see you then. Hope you'll join the discourse, and thank you for watching.